to 20 years, the very first item that people have bought more of than anything else is Coca-Cola and soft drinks, we've really got a problem. And it's showing up in our health. Now, I used to love those soft drinks. I had a deli, for God's sake. It was like, what do I drink now? Fanta, Coke, yeah, okay, orange juice, yeah, done that. What else do I need to pick up my energy? Oh yeah, okay, I'll do that too. Chocolate, ice cream, you name it. So I know what it's like. But you can go into any supermarket and you look at the trolley of someone who walks out of that supermarket and you can say, is that food going to improve their health or is that food going to destroy their health? Because if it's not healthy, it's not going to improve your health. So when you go to the supermarket, the best idea is to walk right around the outside edge. Get all your greens, get all these things, and if you can afford it and you wish to do it, go to the markets and get organic. But if you're buying organic, make sure the organic is good-looking organic. It's not riddled, it's not old, it's not... Because you want the minerals in the food. And you can measure that. But the food has to be the right food for your body, it has to be the right food for you, and it has to be fresh and healthy. And in the food are the minerals. Calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium are all in that food. The building blocks of our body, the things which make up who we are. The food that breaks down, the proteins that break down to the amino acids that our body needs in order to function effectively. All those things are there. They're in the food. If they're in the soil. And the problem is they're screwing up the soil. So what we would normally be able to get out of our food that would really help us stay healthy and invigorate us and everything else often isn't there, and it hasn't been there for 50 years. And one of the reasons is that we've relied, I believe, far too heavily on superphosphate. Rather than looking at the soil and saying, is this soil quality good enough to produce a crop of good, healthy food? What has happened is the superphosphate has just been piled on in order to make the food grow. But doing that, we've lost nutrition. And we've added chemicals to our body that really tend to weigh down our body. When I was studying back in the 1980s, my teacher was telling us about whales 600 k's off the coast of Western Australia, which had DDT in their system. That's drift, crop spraying. Most people who have a real health condition have some level of chemical instability within their body. And it's normal. It's just normal. But our liver, if we keep our liver healthy, our liver can take care of it. So the goal is to keep our liver healthy, keep our organs healthy, so that our body can take care of these things. So they don't cause us traumas and problems. And then enzymes. From the time we think about food, from the time we start to salivate, we are producing enzymes in our body to do a certain job of breaking that food down that we're looking at or smelling into minute particles. Proteases break down proteins. Lipases break down fats, and these are all enzymes. The amylases break down carbohydrates. So for every food we have a corresponding enzyme which must be produced to break that food down to its singular components so it can get into our bloodstream so it can rebuild our body. Otherwise we can't rebuild. Does that make sense? That's why if we suddenly lost all of the enzymes from our body, we would be dead in an instant. And that is why the less enzymes we have, or the more we are deficient in some of the enzymes, the inability of our body to break down those foods is going to be compromised. And because enzymes break down cancer cells, they break the protein coating of the cancer cell to make the cancer cell available to our immune system. Keeping our enzyme levels high is a critical component of health. Because we are generally producing, I believe, cancer cells all the time, but our body is taking care of them. Now, the difficulty is, if we don't drink enough water, the enzymes won't work and the food won't get broken down. And if the food isn't broken down, we can't have the minerals, and if we haven't got the minerals, we can't have the right bone structure. We can't have the right nerve cells. We can't have the right anything, basically, if we don't have the right minerals. Luckily, we've got lots of fail-safe mechanisms within our body. And one of those things can be cravings. What we crave generally means there's something in that food for us. In chocolate, it might be magnesium. If it's dairy, it might be the calcium. The problem is without the enzymes, we can't get it out, so we keep craving. That's without the emotional stuff that goes along with cravings. That's just in the physical realm. So if we haven't got sufficient water, the enzymes don't work, the food doesn't get broken down, we don't get the minerals, we don't rebuild our body. Now, one of the things that stops that happening is a little thing which we've all experienced, called stress. Anytime we're stressed, anytime we get shocked, anytime we get anxious, anytime we are otherwise focused than on just enjoying our meal and having a good time with it, the stress stops our digestive system from working properly. And because we are stressed, we go into what is called fight or flight. And fight or flight was really discovered by a guy called Hans Selye back in the 1930s. So it's been around a long time. But if you look at the conditions that it causes, they are myriad. And most of them are on the second page of that handout you've got on your chair. So those conditions, nervousness, anxiety, panic attacks, all of those are caused by fight or flight. They are caused because the body has gone into a low blood sugar state. And in the low blood sugar state, what tends to happen is energy goes like this. So 10:30 in the morning, you want a cup of coffee. If not, back at 7:30 this mornings nowadays. And about 2:30 in the afternoon, you want to sleep, you want to lie down, or you want something sweet, cake, chocolate, something. And then at night, you're wired and you can't sleep. Or you'll drink a bottle of wine because you can't sleep. That's all because your body is overstressed. Your body's not dealing with stress effectively. Does that make sense? So the more that we learn to deal with stress effectively, the more that what we have is a steady energy through the day. We might have a snack at morning tea time, and then at lunchtime we'll have another meal. And our body, because it's got the right food in it, will keep stable. And our energy will keep stable right through the day. The more we crave, the more we have a cup of coffee here and a cup of coffee here and a cup of coffee here, the more we put ourselves back in this pattern. And the problem is, from here to here is where anxiety, depression, all start. And they start because the lack of oxygen and glucose through to the brain. because the digestive system cannot get the energy there because it wasn't taken in to stabilise the blood sugar effectively. And the difficulty is hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, and it causes all of the symptoms on that second page. Hypoglycemia is not recognised as a condition of itself. It's only recognised in diabetes. Or if they do a 6-hour glucose tolerance test. I think they've cut it back now to 4 hours, but they need to do a 6-hour glucose tolerance test to find out, are you truly hypoglycemic? And most doctors don't look at it. So if you've got a headache, they're not looking for hypoglycemia. If you've got a panic attack, they're not looking for hypoglycemia. What they're looking for is something different. And if you've had low energy for a long time, they're not looking for hypoglycemia. If you've had chronic fatigue syndrome or fatigue, tiredness, or any of those things, they are not generally looking for your blood sugar. And the test that they do, the blood sugar test that they do, the glucose test they do, generally will show okay. Whereas the RBTI tends to show it as not okay. And the reason for that is that your blood sugar can drop in stress. So any stress is going to drop your blood sugar if you don't have stability of the minerals within your body. So the importance is to make sure that you keep the mineral level within your body and these 4 things at the right levels so that your body isn't stressed. Because stress is like a trauma to the body. A little bit of stress is okay. Gravity's stress on our body. It helps us grow. Other things can be a stress on our body because they help us to learn how to do it better. They help us to learn how to recognize something and avoid it. Or they help us to learn how to get through something and get stronger because of it. But if we have a continual repatterning within our system of stress, then our energy is going to bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce. And it's not going to bounce in a nice way. So the goal is to find out what your stresses are. And often they are merely not eating the right food. Like I say, too many junk food shops around these days. So knowing that means that when you see this pattern, you can recognize it. Most people can handle 1 cup of coffee a day. Most people can't handle 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I had one guy, he had 30 odd cups of coffee a day. And he would say, and he was a practitioner by the way, and he would say, yeah, but I don't drink them all. I just, sip from them and then they sit there and then I throw them out and get another one. He came down with MS. I don't know whether the coffee was the cause of the MS. What I do know is it wasn't a good thing to do to his body. And that's what we have to look at really. Is this a good thing to do to my body? This thing that I'm doing still? This chocolate I'm eating or this cake or this, that? And I'm not against cake, I'm not against chocolate. It's more that if you have a certain condition, then recognizing the cause and doing something about it could be, because I'm not going to say should be, we've got too many shoulds, could be your priority. Especially if you've got a health condition you want to let go of. And that means you're going to have to fight the voice inside of you and say, well, you deserve it, blah, 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 blah. And the other voice that says, well, yeah, you were no good anyway. And let them go too. The thing is, when you challenge them, when you learn how to listen to them and challenge them, you can then learn how to let them go. First of all, you've got to find them. So once you deal with that stress, which is the food, the minerals, the enzyme stress, by putting the right things into your body, that stabilizes the physical body. Then you can start to look at childhood issues. Teenage issues, because I know I carried a lot around. Relationship issues and work issues. Because when I look at all these things with people, what I find is a lot of people carry this stuff around. So many people stressed, school teachers especially, stressed because of the amount of paperwork at school, the amount of stress that they've got, the kids that are there and the way the kids are performing, all because this isn't right. It's not right. Once we get this right, we'll have better behaved kids. If we had this right in our prisons, we'd have better behaved prisoners. If we had this right in our communities, we'd have better behaved people. We'd have less road rage. We'd have more peace. And we'd get on and do worthwhile things rather than have to police everybody so much. And the way to help to let all of that go, well, I use hypnotherapy, but there's other things as well. And the goal is to come into what we call active discernment. And active discernment is that place where you are in charge, where you stay in the middle of that and you say, yep, okay, I'm checking my water, checking my food, checking my minerals, checking my enzymes. I got stuff left over from childhood. Oh, that first grade teacher really hated them. Okay, teenage, oh, she let me down. I can't trust anybody. That follows through to the relationship and that follows through to work. Do you see how it all works? And if we have a trauma here, domestic violence, whatever it might be, it's usually not just there in a person's life. Well, it actually started back here. And sometimes it starts in the womb. And you don't know until you ask the right questions. So knowing the questions to ask, knowing what to do about these things is really the priority. Learning how to do that. And by getting rid of the residues of whatever was there, relationships improve. And issues in relationships aren't there anymore because you actually learn to relate to someone else rather than judge them by what's gone before. And I believe relationships are two-way streets. And there's a lot more we could say about that, but maybe another time. The important thing is to understand that no matter what the situation here, it can come out of anything here. So you have to go through systematically and say, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? What do I do about that? Does that make sense? Okay. So, let's start with the hardest one. The main cause that Kerry Reams found for blood diseases was an inability of the body to take up vitamin A. Getting vitamin A into the system was the way that he helped people overcome things like leukemia. Okay? And it's a process. It's a process of all of those things to help it. Yeah, to get the balance right. Restless legs. Well, the nervous system relies on calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium in order to be functioning effectively. So restless legs could come from a lack of calcium, magnesium, sodium, or potassium, or vitamin E. However, when you get those things right, the restless legs go away. And I don't care how long you've had it, 20 years, 30 years, doesn't matter. It goes away. And it goes away because you found the answer. It might not all be all you need, but for that condition, that is 99.9% of time the answer. Poly meaning many, myalgia meaning pain in, rheumatica Many pains throughout the body, correct? Yeah. All of that. Systematically. Look at the water intake, look at the food intake, look at those things. Build the body up, and if it's aches and pains throughout the body and it's of unknown origin, usually, they say unknown origin, yeah. You can actually work through it. As I say, if you read Margaret Hill's book, Curing Arthritis the Drug-Free Way, she talks about what she did and the steps that she took. So Epsom salt baths, getting the minerals right, all of those things, getting the enzymes, getting anti-inflammatory enzymes into the system, they all help. Same for anyone with fibromyalgia, same thing, same condition. Arthritis, well, we've talked quite a bit about it again. Look at that book by Margaret Hills and understand that you'll see on that front sheet I put out there for Pottinger's cats, when they ate the wrong food for their body, they came down with arthritis. They came down with diabetes. They come down with thyroid conditions. You know, these are cats. But he did such a controlled study on those cats. And what he fed them even changed the ground in which their pens were as to whether it could grow bushes or not. And the ones that were fed on the crappy food, nothing grew. From their feces and their urine, nothing grew. But in the other pens where he fed them the right food, bushes grew. Diabetes type 1. There is on YouTube a diabetes university by a guy in his 80s who was instrumental in getting diabetics tested, who has lived with diabetes for I don't know how many years, 60 to 70 years maybe. And he came through a time where they had to go to the doctor once a month to regulate their insulin levels to find out how much insulin to use, and he was instrumental. He was an engineer, I think. And because they would not actually do self-testing, they wouldn't allow self-testing, he went and studied to be a doctor in the hope that he could help people become self-testers. And he takes people through, there's a lot of information on his website about diabetes type 1 and the level to keep the glucose at, the right level for the body to regulate it to, and it's much lower than what is normally accepted.
That
So
doesn't cure it.
he hasn't,
Produce insulin and that's it.
the body doesn't produce insulin, no, but by eating the right food you can cut down the actual insulin that is taken, and that can protect the body. Insulin itself is a problem because it's a salt and it causes a hardening of the arteries and it causes neurological conditions. And that's why a lot of people with diabetes end up having legs amputated or things amputated. So it's important to understand there is a bit more information to be gained on that website. He calls it Diabetes University. Chronic fatigue, all of that. The one thing with chronic fatigue that tends to be similar through just about every case that I've treated is that people tend to use too much energy for the energy they have. So with chronic fatigue, and you'll see that in the handout that I've got at the back of the room later on, one of the things with chronic fatigue is to understand that you have to protect your energy. If you don't have energy, you have to go slowly. You can't go for a 30-minute walk if it's going to exhaust you. The goal is to get the energy back by doing this. Then the reality is you have to conserve that energy like a savings bank account. You have to bank energy. Same for tiredness, you have to bank energy. And once you start to bank that energy, you can do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. But if you expend the energy that you've got from the right food, you're still not going to have energy. So we've got the energy that we get from our food, but then we've also got like a reserve energy tank. In chronic fatigue, we've got no reserve energy tank. There's nothing in it anymore. So you've got to refill it. You've got to get it back in there. But yes, it can be overcome. PTSD, is extreme for a lot of people, especially returned servicemen, and I'm going to be doing a lot more about that in the future.